You know what's beautiful about humanity? We invented airplanes, antibiotics, and the internet, and then immediately used that same brainpower to fall for a guy selling miracle money crystals out of his garage. It's incredible. Every time history gives us a chance to evolve, someone shows up at a gas station trying to recruit you into a pyramid scheme disguised as a travel club. People have faked moon minerals, sold bottled tap water as wealth potion, and even tried launching an investment fund for invisible cats. And the worst part? Other people actually bought in. If you think that's as dumb as it gets, buckle up, because this is just the polite warm-up before things get truly, spectacularly stupid. 1. Ah yes, the 1980s, a time of cocaine, shoulder pads, and men realizing they could sell literally nothing for money. Enter Dennis Hope, who decided the moon was for sale. He filed some papers claiming ownership of Earth's nearest rock, and then started selling plots of lunar land to gullible dreamers who thought space was a good investment portfolio. Forget that the Outer Space Treaty already made it illegal. Forget that NASA doesn't exactly take PayPal for crater rentals. Hope just printed out novelty deeds and called it real estate. Thousands of people bought in, including celebrities who now technically own acres of dust 238,900 miles away. The only real winner? Dennis Hope, who turned the moon into the world's most profitable timeshare scam. Imagine trying to evict someone from your lunar driveway. Good luck with that. Better pack snacks for the rocket ride. 2. Nothing screams financial genius like stealing from your own sink. A scammer in the early 2000s decided to fill plastic bottles with ordinary tap water, slap on a label saying oxygenated for wealth attraction, and sell it for $50 a bottle. And here's the kicker. People actually bought it. Customers sincerely believed that drinking this special water would attract money, like the universe was some kind of vending machine that only accepted hydration as payment. Spoiler alert, all they attracted was bankruptcy and a mild chlorine aftertaste. The scam was eventually exposed, but not before he made thousands, which honestly just proves the point. If you sell people wealth water, you don't make them rich. You just prove you're the only one cashing in. It's like a hydration pyramid scheme. The only thing flowing is stupidity. 3. Winning the lottery is supposed to be the American dream, but for many, it's more like a speed run to self-destruction. Take countless winners who went broke within 5 years because they treated millions like arcade tokens. Some bought fleets of luxury cars they couldn't drive, mansions they couldn't maintain, and yes, exotic animals because apparently financial stability means becoming the villain in a Netflix docuseries. Others blew fortunes on entourages of fake friends, endless vacations, and legal battles after realizing marrying your bartender in Vegas might not have been a long-term strategy. By the end, they weren't rich. They were back to working at Walmart, except now with a tiger-shaped swimming pool and a monthly alimony payment that could fund NASA. Turns out, the fastest way to turn millions into zero is to think money is monopoly cash. And spoiler alert, the bank doesn't accept "I bought a lion" as collateral. 4. In the 1990s, Pepsi ran a promotional campaign where you could trade Pepsi points for prizes, t-shirts, leather jackets, maybe a bike. But one genius decided to take the commercial literally when it jokingly advertised that 7 million points could get you a military-grade Harrier fighter jet. Instead of laughing, he calculated that buying enough Pepsi points would cost less than the jet's $30 million price tag. So he wrote Pepsi a check and demanded delivery of his personal warplane. Pepsi naturally laughed him out of court, but he actually sued, claiming false advertising. The judge dismissed it, noting that no sane person would expect a soda company to hand out fighter jets with their six-pack. But honestly, Pepsi should have just given him a coupon for free wings at Applebee's and called it even. 5. Only in America could someone convince buyers that chopped up deer antlers were authentic unicorn horns with magical wealth-bringing powers. He sold them on eBay in the early 2000s, marketing them as ancient relics capable of bringing fortune, fertility, and probably eternal Wi-Fi. Customers lined up, spending hundreds for what was essentially Home Depot scrap wrapped in velvet. Eventually, eBay banned the listings, probably after realizing half their customer base was about to spend retirement savings on medieval fantasy props. The scammer walked away rich, proving that unicorns may not exist, but gullible people with PayPal accounts absolutely do. 6. Remember the 1990s craze where everyone thought stuffed animals were going to pay for their kids' college? Beanie Babies were treated like stock options with polyester stuffing. People hoarded them in plastic cases, convinced a purple bear with a tag typo was worth a yacht. Spoiler, it wasn't. At peak insanity, some couples divorced over custody of their beanie collection. Today, most of those investments are rotting in basements, worth less than the gas it costs to drive them to Goodwill. The only person who actually got rich? Ty Warner, the guy selling them. Everyone else got an expensive reminder that plush toys do not equal Wall Street. 7. One man genuinely advertised invisible cats for sale online, claiming they were magical creatures who just couldn't be seen by the human eye. But he didn't stop there. He pitched it as a business opportunity, encouraging investors to buy invisible kittens in bulk and resell them. And yes, people actually sent him money for empty boxes. When questioned, he claimed the cats were sleeping or very shy. It wasn't just a scam. It was performance art funded by stupidity. Honestly, the only invisible thing here was people's common sense. 8. MLMS. The business model that tells you, don't worry, you're not broke, you're just investing in yourself. From Tupperware to Herbalife, it's always the same. A friend messages you after years of silence, suddenly convinced you're perfect for their team. You buy overpriced products no one needs, recruit more desperate friends, and before you know it, your garage is filled with unsold protein powder while your mentor drives off in the BMW you basically bought for them. MLMS are the financial version of passing along a chain letter. The only guaranteed winner is the guy at the top. For everyone else, it's just an expensive way to lose your friends and your dignity. 9. Yes, someone actually started a fundraiser asking strangers to pay his ransom, except he wasn't kidnapped. His pitch was basically, if I were kidnapped, wouldn't you want me freed? Shockingly, people donated. When it came out, he was just pocketing the money. He claimed it was performance art. That's not art. That's GoFundMe fraud with extra steps. If Picasso painted scams, this would have been his masterpiece. 10. Let's be honest. If you sent thousands of dollars to a random stranger claiming to be royalty trapped in an airport, that's not just gullible. It's Darwin Awards for your bank account. The Nigerian prince scam became legendary because people kept falling for it. Despite the broken grammar, the insane promises, and the fact that no prince in history has ever needed your Western Union account, victims still wired life savings. The scammers even admitted the bad spelling was intentional, because only truly gullible people would reply. In other words, the typos weren't mistakes, they were filters. 11. In the 2000s, one man bought a deserted mining town in California and decided the best way to flip it wasn't redevelopment, but selling bonds backed by ghosts. For $100, investors could buy a share in the supernatural activity of the town with the promise of spiritual dividends. No one ever saw a ghost, but the man still walked away with investors' cash. Somewhere out there, people still think they own a slice of paranormal real estate. Meanwhile, the ghost of capitalism just laughed. 12. An inventor once tried to patent a literal machine that created wealth. It didn't actually print money. It just made vague noises while spinning a wheel. Investors were told it generated energy that attracts abundance. Translation: it was a wooden box with gears that went clunk. The U.S. Patent Office politely rejected it, but not before he conned thousands out of early buy-in shares. Imagine explaining to your spouse that you lost retirement savings to a glorified hamster wheel of delusion. 13. A group of con artists once sold investors raw gold nuggets at inflated prices, except they were just rocks spray-painted gold. Some buyers actually tried to take them to jewelers, who kindly explained they'd been scammed by a can of Rust-Oleum. The brilliance wasn't in the fake gold. It was in the audacity. They even called it unrefined ore, which is just scammer for, we didn't bother scraping the paint. Investors lost millions. Home Depot gained one very suspicious spike in spray paint sales. 14. In the 1970s, one scammer founded a church that required members to tithe not for salvation, but for investment blessings. He promised that donations would come back multiplied by divine intervention, which really just meant he spent it on cars, houses, and private jets. When questioned, he claimed he was manifesting wealth. The IRS had other words: fraud. The best part? Even after he was busted, people defended him, insisting they would have gotten rich if the government hadn't ruined it. A Apparently, faith in stupidity is the strongest religion of all. 15. In the 1600s, Dutch investors decided tulips were basically Bitcoin. Prices skyrocketed so high that a single bulb could be traded for an entire house. People sold everything, believing flowers would make them rich forever. Spoiler: flowers die. The bubble burst, fortunes vanished, and grown men were left holding overpriced plants like confused gardeners. Imagine explaining to your starving family that dinner's canceled because dad invested in petals. It was the original to the moon moment, except the only thing that went to the moon was bankruptcy. 16. In 1925, Victor Lustig pulled off one of the greatest scams in history. He convinced scrap metal dealers he had the authority to sell the Eiffel Tower. He even held a fake government auction, collected massive bribes, and vanished before anyone realized they'd been duped. And then, because once wasn't enough, he tried it again. Imagine the audacity of selling the Eiffel Tower like it was a used car. Honestly, part of me thinks France should have just let him keep it. Anyone with that much confidence deserves a landmark. 17. If you think people are smarter now than in the past, nope. In the early 1900s, George C. Parker made a fortune selling shares in the Brooklyn Bridge to gullible immigrants. He told them they could set up toll booths and make money forever. People literally tried to build fences on the bridge before cops kicked them out. Parker sold the bridge dozens of times. Forget real estate. This man cornered the market on imaginary estate. It's the classic scam that gave us the phrase, "If you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you." 18. In the 2000s, a man in Utah convinced investors he had a gasoline pill. Drop one tablet in water and presto, instant fuel. Sounds like alchemy, or maybe Willy Wonka's automotive factory. He staged fake demos with pre-filled tanks, collected millions from hopeful investors, and promised to end the oil crisis forever. Spoiler: the pills were sugar and baking soda. His victims lost everything and he went to prison. But honestly, the most shocking part is that grown adults believed combustion engines run on the same science as a middle school volcano project. It's less a scam and more a group study in selective brain death. 19. Back in the 19th century, people fell for perpetual motion machines. Inventors claimed they'd built devices that could generate free, infinite energy forever. Investors lined up, throwing money at what was basically a box of gears spinning until friction killed it in 2 minutes. Demonstrations were rigged with hidden pulleys, weights, or very tired assistants turning cranks behind curtains. Every time one was exposed, another popped up, because apparently the dream of free energy is stronger than the human ability to learn from mistakes. Investors weren't funding technology. They were funding history's most expensive hamster wheels. 20. In the 1980s, there was a man who claimed he could turn regular paper into dollar bills using a secret chemical formula. He'd take a blank sheet, dip it in his magic solution, and, surprise, produce money. Except the trick was sleight of hand. The cash was hidden in advance, like the world's worst magician doing birthday party tricks for billionaires. And yet, people invested fortunes in his lab. Think about it. Millionaires lost money to a guy whose entire business plan was basically, ta-da! At least David Copperfield never pretended his illusions would pay your mortgage. 21. In the 1970s, one scammer convinced investors he'd found a diamond mine in the middle of California. He salted the ground with store-bought gems, then invited experts to dig them up, who naturally found diamonds right where he'd planted them. Investors poured millions into what was basically a sandbox filled with jewelry store rejects. When it unraveled, the diamonds were traced back to Tiffany & Company. Imagine losing your life savings to a fake mine and then realizing you could have just gone shopping instead. That's not just a scam. It's the financial equivalent of buying rocks off Etsy. 22. And then there was the miracle magnet bracelet boom. You've probably seen them at mall kiosks. Wear this bracelet and it balances your energy, heals your joints, and maybe even attracts money. Spoiler: it's a hunk of metal pretending to be a science experiment. At one point, companies were making billions selling these things. Athletes swore by them, old folks hoarded them, and investors thought they were backing the future of health. Eventually, science confirmed they do nothing. But hey, nothing says I'm investing in wellness like strapping Radio Shack's clearance aisle to your wrist. 23. In the 1920s, Charles Ponzi himself promised 50% returns in 45 days by trading postal reply coupons. That's right, international postage stamps. He wasn't even clever enough to invent a sexy cover story. He literally said, "Trust me, I'm making millions off the post office." And people believed him. For a while, he actually paid investors using new investors' money, birthing the term Ponzi scheme. Eventually, it collapsed, ruining thousands. But the man's name lives on forever, which is kind of like failing so badly that your last name becomes financial herpes. 24. The Great Emu Egg Investment. Yes, this was real. In the 1990s, American farmers got hyped into raising emus because someone claimed the birds were the future of meat, oil, and leather. Investors sank millions into breeding these 6-foot Australian nightmares, expecting endless profits. Except no one actually wanted emu steaks, emu lotion, or emu anything. The market collapsed. Farmers were left with angry, oversized poultry, and investors lost everything. Imagine explaining to your accountant that your retirement died because the public didn't embrace giant bird burgers. Honestly, the only people laughing were the emus. 25. In the 1800s, snake oil became the hottest get-rich-quick scam. Traveling salesmen promised bottles of mystery liquid could cure everything from arthritis to baldness to general sadness. Some were just flavored alcohol, others were turpentine mixed with optimism. People bought them in droves because apparently the cure for stupidity wasn't included. The scam was so big that snake oil salesmen became a permanent insult. And the irony? Real snake oil actually has some medicinal properties. The problem was these guys skipped the snake and went straight to selling lantern fuel in a bottle. 26. In the 2000s, a man convinced people to invest in ostrich farms. He promised ostrich meat, ostrich leather, ostrich feathers, basically an entire future built on giant birds. Investors lined up, expecting luxury fashion and exotic steaks. The reality? Ostriches eat a ton, kick like UFC fighters, and nobody wanted to buy ostrich burgers. The farms collapsed, and investors lost millions. The only winners were the birds, who got to live free and majestic while humans paid for the privilege of being kicked in the chest. Honestly, this might be the first scam where the victims deserved it. 27. The Cabbage Patch Kids scalpers of the 1980s believed buying dolls would make them millionaires. People camped outside toy stores, hoarded hundreds, and resold them at insane markups. For a brief moment, it worked. Then the craze ended, and they were left with basements full of creepy dolls staring back at them like the ghosts of failed capitalism. Some even went bankrupt, holding inventory that looked like it was plotting murder. It's one thing to go broke, it's another to go broke surrounded by an army of plastic children. 28. In the 2000s, one guy convinced people to invest in a money tree. Not figuratively, an actual tree that supposedly grew banknotes. He grafted bills onto branches for demonstrations, then claimed the tree could replicate money biologically. Investors poured in cash, probably imagining a forest of dollar bills waving in the breeze. Turns out, he was just taping money to leaves like a deranged arts and crafts teacher. When it collapsed, investors admitted they wanted to believe. Of course they did. Humanity will ignore centuries of biology if it means skipping a day job. 29. The golden investment scam in the 1980s promised investors profits from melted-down gold teeth. Yes, use dental fillings. The idea was, people die, gold gets extracted, you get rich. Morbid, sure, but profitable? Not really. Most fillings weren't pure gold, extraction was expensive, and the supply chain relied on dead strangers. Investors realized too late they'd basically funded a dental recycling Ponzi scheme. Imagine telling your grandkids you lost the house because you believed corpses were your retirement plan. That's not a portfolio. That's a horror movie. 30. In the 1990s, some genius pitched pet rocks as an investment. It started as a gag gift, but people bought into the idea that first edition pet rocks would skyrocket in value, like baseball cards or comic books. Spoiler, they didn't. Collectors hoarded shoeboxes of rocks with googly eyes, waiting for the market to boom. It never did. Today they're worthless, except as reminders that you can slap googly eyes on a driveway pebble and make $1 million. Once. The second time, you just look like a guy with a rock problem. 31. In the 2000s, scammers ran airline miles investment funds. They bought up bulk frequent flyer miles, promised investors they'd resell them for massive profit, and pocketed the cash instead. People handed over fortunes because they thought Sky Miles were basically the new stock market. The The scam collapsed when airlines caught on, voided the miles, and investors realized they'd literally invested in points that didn't exist. Nothing screams retirement strategy like staking your future on imaginary vacations. 32. The Ponzi wine scheme was a masterpiece of stupidity. A con man promised investors he'd buy rare wines, let them age, then sell them for massive profit. Investors loved it. Who doesn't want to get rich off fancy booze? The catch? He never bought the wine. He just sent fake receipts and used new money to pay old investors. By the time it collapsed, millions had been lost, and collectors realized they'd basically funded a frat party for scammers. It's the first time fine wine gave people a hangover without even being opened. 33. In the 1800s, people fell for the South Sea Bubble. A company promised endless wealth from trading with South America, except it didn't have ships, goods, or even a business plan. Investors still piled in because the words trade and profit make people forget due diligence exists. The bubble burst, fortunes vanished, and it went down as one of history's dumbest financial meltdowns. Investors literally bought into a company that had nothing. It's like buying stock in Magic Beans Inc. and acting surprised when you don't get a castle. 34. And of course, the X-ray vision glasses scam of the 20th century. Advertised in comic books, these cheap cardboard glasses claim to give you the power to see through clothes. Thousands of gullible teens mailed in their allowance, dreaming of superhero powers and pervy fantasies. What they got was 2 pieces of film that made everything blurry. No X-ray, no vision, just disappointment. It was marketed as a toy, but some people genuinely thought they'd struck gold. Imagine believing your road to fortune was $5 mail-order peep goggles. That's not just dumb. It's Marvel-level delusion without the box office. 35. In the early 2000s, a company launched something called nose-shaped air purifiers. The pitch: clip them on your face, look ridiculous, and breathe cleaner air while attracting prosperity. Investors bought in, thinking this was the future of health tech. Spoiler: the future looked like everyone wearing plastic pig snouts. The devices did nothing, except maybe repel dates. By the time the scam collapsed, the only thing purified was investors' bank accounts. Honestly, the only miracle here was convincing grown adults that prosperity comes from looking like you lost a bet at a costume party. 36. There was once a scam called prime banknotes, where slick salesmen convinced people they had access to secret government-backed bonds only wealthy insiders could buy. These weren't just investments. They were supposedly the same notes the Illuminati used to launder their billions. Of course, no such notes existed. Investors handed over fortunes for what was basically monopoly money in a suit. The scam worked for decades because nothing seduces a human brain like the phrase exclusive access. It's the financial version of a nightclub velvet rope, only instead of overpriced cocktails, you got scammed by guys in cheap ties. 37. In 2006, a man raised money for a company that promised DNA-based dating. Yes, people paid thousands to send in cheek swabs so his lab could match them with genetically compatible partners. Investors poured in cash, thinking they'd corner the market on science meets romance. The only problem? His lab was a strip mall office with a fax machine. Matches were generated randomly, often pairing people with their own relatives. By the time the fraud unraveled, investors realized they hadn't funded love. They'd funded a fake Cupid armed with a lottery machine. Honestly, Tinder might have been cheaper. 38. Remember the dot-com bubble? One startup convinced investors they'd make billions by selling cyber mall space. Not websites, not services, just literal virtual square footage inside a 3D mall you'd walk through online. Imagine Minecraft, but for shopping in Windows 95 graphics. Investors lined up, thinking this was the future of retail. Then broadband happened, Amazon happened, and the cyber mall became the digital equivalent of a burned-out strip mall with a broken orange Julius sign. Investors lost millions. On the bright side, it's probably still out there. An abandoned mall in cyberspace haunted by ghost avatars holding pixelated Sears coupons. 39. In the 1970s, a scammer told investors he'd discovered oil in the Nevada desert. He held press tours at a well, showing barrels filled with crude. The catch? He'd bought the oil from legitimate suppliers and dumped it down the shaft for show. Investors saw black liquid, lost their minds, and poured money into what was essentially a giant prop theater. Eventually, regulators caught on, but not before millions disappeared. Imagine realizing your retirement savings went into a desert hole filled with borrowed oil. That's not an investment. It's a very expensive puddle. 40. Somewhere in Florida, of course it was Florida, a man pitched alligator farming for profit. The idea: raise gators, sell their skins, become rich. Investors loved it, pouring money into gator bonds. The reality? Alligators are expensive, violent, and not exactly great house pets. The farms collapsed, investors lost millions, and the only winners were the alligators, who got free food while humanity footed the bill. Honestly, this might be the first time in history reptiles successfully ran a Ponzi scheme. 41. In the 1990s, a startup claimed it could mine asteroids for precious metals. Sounds futuristic, right? Except their investor demo was literally painted rocks in a fish tank. They raised millions before anyone noticed NASA hadn't actually signed them up for intergalactic mining permits. Investors thought they'd get platinum. Instead, they funded what was basically a high school science project with glitter. Somewhere, aliens are laughing at us, knowing humans bankrupted themselves on fake space rocks before even reaching Mars. 42. There was a scheme where a company promised to make millions by selling bottled Arctic air. Literally, cans of cold northern air marketed as a luxury item for stressed city dwellers. Investors went crazy, dreaming of fortunes from packaging nothing. And yes, customers actually bought it, until they realized you can open a window for free. The company tanked, leaving warehouses full of canned air, which is maybe the most perfect metaphor for human stupidity ever. People paying money to breathe. 43. In the late 1800s, a con man named Gregor McGregor, yes, that's really his name, sold bonds and land deeds for a country he invented. Not conquered, not colonized, literally invented. He called it Poyais, described it as a tropical paradise, and convinced hundreds to buy land and move there. They actually sailed to Central America, only to discover their promised utopia was a swamp with mosquitoes. Investors lost fortunes, settlers died, and McGregor walked away rich. This wasn't just a scam, it was real estate fan fiction. 44. In the 2000s, some scammer pitched solar roadways, where highways would be paved with solar panels generating unlimited electricity. Investors piled in, imagining a utopia of glowing streets powering entire cities. The prototype? A few panels that cracked under truck tires and barely powered a toaster. Millions vanished into a project that proved roads are for cars, not charging stations. Investors thought they were building the future. Instead, they built the world's most expensive driveway light. 45. In the 1980s, there was a craze around coin-operated laundromat investments. The pitch: buy shares in laundromats, collect passive income forever. Except scammers sold ownership of the same laundromat to dozens of investors. Imagine 30 people showing up to the same dingy laundromat, each insisting they own 10%. It ended in lawsuits, arrests, and more people discovering their retirement was tied up in mildew-scented dryers. Honestly, it's the only time investors got hung out to dry literally and financially. 46. At one point, someone convinced investors to fund haunted attraction stocks. They promised a nationwide chain of ghost-themed amusement parks, complete with animatronics, haunted houses, and year-round Halloween. Investors drooled over the spooky profits. The only problem? No parks were ever built. The money disappeared, leaving investors with nothing but ghosted phone calls. The real horror wasn't in the attractions, it was in their portfolios. 47. Then there was the underwater hotel pitch. Investors were promised luxury suites beneath the ocean, complete with panoramic fish views. Millions were raised, blueprints were shown, and celebrities even endorsed it. The catch? Nobody bothered to figure out how to stop the ocean from crushing glass domes. Not a single room was built. Investors ended up funding nothing but wet paper sketches. Turns out, the ocean doesn't really care about your ROI. 48. In 2005, one man ran a scam selling time travel shares. He claimed he was building a working time machine and offered early investors a cut of the profits once he started charging for trips through history. People actually invested. His lab was a storage unit with blinking Christmas lights. Investors later admitted they knew it was risky but thought, what if it works? Imagine explaining at bankruptcy court that your portfolio got wiped out because Doc Brown never showed up with the DeLorean. 49. During the crypto boom, scammers launched Banana Coin. Supposedly, each coin was backed by actual bananas grown on Laotian plantations. Investors loved it, healthy snacks and healthy returns. Except the farms didn't exist, and the only bananas were the investors who bought in. When it collapsed, people realized they'd put their life savings into fruit-themed monopoly money. Honestly, it's poetic. Humanity finally invented digital bananas before solving world hunger. 50. And of course, we can't forget the selling the Brooklyn Bridge scam. It was so common in the early 1900s that cops joked about it. Conmen sold ownership rights to the bridge to gullible newcomers, even handing out fake deeds. Some buyers actually tried to set up toll booths before being arrested. Imagine showing up for your first day as a proud new bridge owner, hammering in $1 toll signs and getting tackled by police. Honestly, it's the scam that keeps on giving, because even today, someone somewhere is still trying to sell you a bridge. Just now, it's online. 51. And finally, the dumbest get-rich-quick scheme of all time. Buying into someone else's get-rich-quick scheme. That's it. The oldest, most reliable scam isn't lunar land, ghost bonds, or invisible cats. It's the idea that the next big thing is waiting for you if you just write one more check. Every bubble, every fraud, every scheme in this list runs on the same fuel: human greed paired with Olympic-level gullibility. The scammers don't even have to be clever anymore. They just have to say, "This is your chance to get rich," and wait for the wallets to fly open. Honestly, the real money-making machine isn't any product, invention, or miracle cure. It's human stupidity, an infinite, renewable resource powering scams for centuries. And judging by history, it's the only thing that truly pays dividends forever. And there you have it, an entire highlight reel of humanity, proving that when it comes to chasing fast money, we'll believe literally anything as long as it's wrapped in confidence and a shiny brochure. From ghost investments to digital bananas, the creativity is endless, but the IQ points clearly aren't. Now it's your turn. Which one deserves the crown for dumbest scheme of all time? Or better yet, what scams have you seen in the wild that could have made this list? Drop your vote in the comments, smash that like button if your wallet survived this far, and subscribe. Because trust me, the stupidity doesn't end here.